Hi guys, Randy here with Rescue Drive, and today we're going to take a look at the installation process. More specifically, we're going to take a look at how an IT administrator can control the various backup options that are displayed during the installation process for all of their users. So we're going to do that with a tool called Site Tools, which is this guy right here, and this has all of the various options that get displayed during the Rescue Drive install. And when we're finished, we're going to click Write Settings, and that will create our site info.ini file on the desktop. Now, if that ini file is in the same folder as the Rescue Drive installation program, then all of the selections that were made in this program will get realized during the install of the software. So let's start off with taking a look at the installation screens of the Rescue Drive install, and those can all be controlled with these checkboxes. So if we check all of the boxes, that means the user will have access to all of the various features in the Rescue Drive software. Now let's take a look at what those screens look like. So the first screen here is to allow VHD backups, which is this guy right here. And this controls whether we create the default mirror or we allow creating of a VHD image backup. The second screen is our target drive selection. The third screen is our backup options. The fourth is whether or not we create a data vault. And the last screen is our BitLocker options. So again, we can turn those screens on or off with these checkboxes. So let's say, for instance, we want to force our users to use the default mirror backup, and we don't want to allow them to perform VHD backups. So if we uncheck this, this screen won't get displayed during the install process. So backup options, let's take a look at those. All of the backup options on the right are displayed on this backup options screen, and we can control the default settings for each of these options. So the first option is whether or not we're going to create a recurring schedule for the backup, whether we're going to create a startup boot menu to boot from the backup drive, whether we're going to turn on ransomware protection on the backup drive, excluding temp folders and files during a full system backup, and whether or not we're going to create a data vault. So these just control the default, but if we turn the backup options screen off, then we're going to basically force the user to use whatever settings we create here. So next, let's take a look at our BitLocker settings, and we can set a password here. And this is basically just going to set a default password that we're going to suggest that the user uses. And we always have to encrypt, and then that way, whenever the INI file for the Site Tools application gets created, the BitLocker password will get stored in an encrypted fashion and not in the clear. Now there's a few other options we can turn on or off for BitLocker. We can unlock the drive whenever the target drive is connected. We can lock the backup drive whenever a backup completes. We can select whether or not we're going to use 256 versus 128-bit encryption. And the last one is to store the BitLocker password on the PC. Now the reason we would want to do that is if we want to schedule backups to a locked BitLocker drive. So if we want those backups to run unattended, we have to store the password, otherwise we can't unlock the drive. So if your users are using laptops and they're never going to launch a scheduled backup, just go ahead and make sure that this is unchecked. But if we want to run unattended backups, you got to have this checked. Otherwise, those backups will fail with an error. So our next option is whether or not we're going to create a BitLocker security key. That's a 48-character key that can be used in case the BitLocker password is ever forgotten. And that gets stored in a file, and we can control where that file gets written to with this path control. And that can go to either the local machine or it can go to a remote location. And that path is fully supported by environment variables. So for instance, if we want to store that in the profile folder of all of our users, we can use the environment variable to accomplish that. The next option probably is not really going to be needed very often, but Rescue Drive does create a number of databases and we can control where those are stored. Normally they're stored in the install path, but we can actually change that with this control. And environment variables are also supported there as well. And the last feature we have is if there are certain folders on all of our users' machines that we want to exclude from the backup process, and we could browse and select those paths here. And again, environment variables work here too. So at this point, let's go ahead and select not to show the VHD page or the target selection page. And let's keep excluding temp folders and our data vault selected as well. And let's go ahead, maybe we'll put on 256-bit encryption. And we'll do write settings. And that creates our siteinfo.ini file on the desktop. And whenever we run our Rescue Drive install, if there's a siteinfo ini file in the same path, then all of those options that we selected will be enforced during the Rescue Drive install. So I've got a command prompt opened up here as administrator, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the Rescue Drive install executable. And I'm also going to use this silent parameter so we can launch an unattended install. Now, what this allows you to do is script the installation on each of your machines whenever you're creating the various images for your users. And you'll notice that when the install completes, we've got this open backup monitor icon created on the desktop. So at this point, you could shut the machine down, ship it to your users, and as soon as they turn the machine on, all they have to do is double click on Open Backup Monitor, and we can continue with our first backup. And our license screen shows. Click Next. We have a slight pause here while we create antivirus exclusions for Windows Defender. If those exclusions aren't created, then Rescue Drive potentially can get blocked by Defender. So that's why we create those automatically in the background. And you'll notice that in our siteinfo program, we chose to skip the first two screens in the install. So rather than going to either VHD or the target drive selection, we went right to the backup options screen. And we chose this one option here for excluding temp files. And if we click Next, we also chose to turn on our data vault. So at this point, we can go ahead and click Next. And you will see our BitLocker settings with our suggested password in place. AES256, we also chose that in our siteinfo tool. And at this point, we're ready to start the first full system backup. So that's about it for Rescue Drive installation. Thanks a lot for watching.